Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this second day of our FTP on Introduction to Data Mining and Machine Learning. So, first of all, I would like to recap what we have studied yesterday. So, we have seen the basics of data mining and machine learning, uh, how data mining and machine learning are interrelated to one another, and how they are useful in the present era, and how the machine learning process is being used in data mining so as to extract information and the different types of machine learning algorithms, supervised and unsupervised. And before giving the data to the actual machine learning algorithms, we have to perform some pre-processing techniques. So we have seen some of the pre-processing techniques like filling up the missing data, the normalization part, and the different types of normalization and how they are associated to one another. So yesterday we have seen the different types of machine learning algorithms. So today first I would like to introduce the classification algorithm. So classification algorithm is basically a supervised algorithm where you have the outputs as a classified variable like yes or no or true or false or whether he is a cheat or not. So like that you have binary type of variables or different types of classes. So before going to the actual classification algorithms, first we look into the different steps which are involved in the machine learning algorithm process. So as you seen yesterday, we have seen this process which is also related to data mining. So where we'll be first gathering the data which is required for the machine learning algorithms. And in that bulk data, we'll be taking the data or attributes which are in need for processing and we'll be pre-processing the data. So again, pre-processing involves eliminating unwanted data and normalizing the data according to requirements. And the next step would be to choose a model. So whether it is a classification or regression and what type of algorithm you want to apply. So all those decisions are made while you are choosing a model for determining the output. Then the model is again trained. So you'll be training the algorithm based on the data. So what you do is that you take the entire data set, you'll take the columns which are necessary for processing, and you'll be dividing the data set into training and testing data. So that model will be trained according to the training data and evaluated on the testing data. So you'll be training it and evaluating on both the training and testing data. So then you'll be using some of the hyperparameters. So hyperparameters are nothing but it will be helpful in improving the performance of the algorithm. So there are basically they'll be supplied as inputs to the algorithm in the coding, and by tuning those hyperparameters, you'll be able to improve the performance of the algorithm. So, and last, you will be predicting the new output. So, depending on the before whatever you have given the variables as input, you'll be giving a new value to be predicted. So that depending on the training that is given to the algorithm, it predicts the value of the new input which is given and it gives the output. So this is the basically the steps which are involved in a machine learning algorithm. So yesterday we have already seen the pre-processing technique. So today we'll be seeing how to choose a model, train it, and hyperparameter will be dealing with this some in a lighter sense, and we'll be predicting the data. So these are some of the base classifiers algorithms. First one is the decision tree. Next is k-nearest neighbor and Navy Bayes algorithm, support vector machine. And ensemble methods are where you'll be combining these base classifiers and you'll be creating another kind of algorithm and you'll be executing. So random forest is nothing but a combination of the decision trees. And you call it as ensemble. Ensemble is nothing but the combination of the base algorithms like decision trees if they are combined together, and how many decision trees you want to perform. So all those things will be combined together and it will be given as out. So first we'll go through the decision tree algorithm. So today we'll be first seeing the decision tree algorithm. As I told you yesterday, the coding part would be to create a object and call the fit, and you'll be evaluating the algorithm. So before that, you want to see what is happening behind. Like if you write the code and execute it, what it is happening inside. So how the algorithm is performed. So that is important to understand. So if you take this brief example here, the algorithm might be creating a decision tree like this. So these are the dependent variables, independent variables, and this is a dependent variable. So these are independent, and this is a dependent variable, or you can call them as inputs, and this will be the output class, whichever we have to determine. So default borrower is nothing but who has paid the loan or who hasn't paid the loan, yes or no, like that. So our target class mainly consists of two variables, yes or no. And our input class mainly consists of all these variables, whether he is a homeowner, marital status, and annual income. So if you remember the type of attributes which we have seen, these come under categorical, and this is a continuous attribute. So depending on this data, if a new data is given, the algorithm has to predict whether he will be a default for a yes or no. So taking this data as input, the algorithm it will construct a decision tree. So decision tree is nothing but a group of nodes, which will be like a tree structure, and you will be having the categories of which is that attribute. So if you take homeowner, it has yes or no. So homeowner will be if it is taken as a root node. If it is yes, then automatically the class will be assigned no. So if you see here, already if he is a homeowner, he is more intended to pay the loan easy. So so he is more intended to pay the loan. That's why default borrower is kept as no. So if he is a homeowner, you directly give it as no. So again, if the marital status, if it is no, then you'll go to the marital status. Here again, there are different kinds here, single or divorced or married. So depending on that, you'll be reaching a conclusion of what class has to be assigned to the new data. So it will take this decision tree and it will consider the new input which you have given and it gives the output. So this is basically easy to understand when you see the diagrammatic part. But the main thing is how these attributes are splitted. So how this is splitted here. That is the main thing which is need to be understand whatever is going inside the algorithm. So the main thing why you need to understand this is for the same data, you'll have more than one decision tree. So if you see here in the previous slide, you have homeowner as a root node and matter status and income as the internal nodes. But when you take the same data, you'll be having the marital status and you'll be having the homeowner as internal node. So there might be many decision trees which might be constructed with the given data. So we need to know how the algorithm is constructing a optimal decision tree, what are the parameters it is taking as input, and how it is splitting the attributes. All these things need to be understood. So for that, uh, before that, going to that, if a new test data is given, how does it determine the output? So if it, as I told you, if homeowner is no, it will automatically determine the output class as no. So default borrower will automatically be assigned no. Otherwise, it goes to the marital status. Here it is given as married, so it will take as no. So like that, it will be determined. So it is easy to understand while you are seeing the tree structure, but how the algorithm decides on the root node, how the algorithm splits the attributes, all these things needs to be understood. So for that, the algorithm mainly relies upon the splitting measures. So splitting measures are nothing but how these attributes are splitted. So how this splitting is being done. the decision tree. So for that, the splitting measure which are taken is Gini index. So first you'll be seeing Gini index, and there is another attribute measure which is known as entropy. So, but most of the decision tree algorithms they follow Gini index, as entropy has logarithmic operations in it, and it is more time complex in nature. So if you see Gini index can be defined as the degree or probability of a particular variable being wrongly classified when it is chosen. So that is nothing but when you choose a attribute for making a decision, how much probability is there that it is wrongly classified. So that is given by the Gini index. So if the all the elements are belonging to a single class, you mean it is a pure class. When you see the definition, it means nothing but you have to take an attribute, you have to calculate the Gini index, and you have to consider an attribute which is having the less probability value. So anyhow, the probability will be varying between 0 and 1 only. So whichever is lesser value, which is having lesser value, will be taken as the input for splitting, because it mainly considers as an impurity. So it is considering it as impurity measure. So we'll be seeing the what are the math involved in this. So Gini index is basically calculated by 1 minus sigma equal to 1 pi square, where pi is the probability of an object being classified to a particular class. So you just remember this formula, you'll understand the whole thing which is happening when you see with an example. So for now, you can remember this formula: 1 minus sigma, the whole attribute values and the probability. Okay. So here we are taking this example of a stock market. So where we are predicting the actual returns of the shares depending on the other attributes. So here our independent variables are past trend, open interest, and trading value. So you need not understand these terms in depth, but how the decision tree is being calculated, we'll be seeing. So the return column is the output. So return has bothly up and down, whether the stock market or the shares might go up or down. That is need to be understood here. So we'll be taking this as independent variables, past trend, open interest, and trading value, and we have to calculate the return. So the decision tree, if you give a new input, new past trend, new value for open interest, and new fall value for trading volume, it should be able to determine the return. So what will be the return? So that is the main task here. So what the algorithm does is it takes each of the attribute and it determines first which attribute has to be selected as a root node by calculating the Gini index. So first it will be taking the past trend here because it is available as a first attribute. So here past trend has both positive and negative values. So if you see probability of having past trend as positive. So excuse me. Hello. Yeah, I request the participants
Hello.
to mute. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Can you mute yourselves?
బాత్రూమ్ పోయినాడు స్నానానికి.
Hello.
డ్యూటీకి మండే నుంచి వెళ్తాడంట, ఇంట్లో నుంచే చేస్తున్నాడు. ల్యాప్టాప్ ముందర కూర్చొని ఫోన్లో మాట్లాడుతూ ఉంటాడు. నేను క్లాసులు వింటూ ఉంటా ల్యాప్టాప్లో. అయిపోయింది, ఇంకా నెక్స్ట్ సెమిస్టర్ ప్లాన్ చేయలేదు, ఇంకా దాని గురించి షెడ్యూల్ ఏమి ఇవ్వలేదు.
Can
ఇవ్వట్లేదు.
you please mute?
ఏమో మీలాగా గవర్నమెంట్ ఉద్యోగాల మాకేమైనా నెల నెల ఇవ్వడానికి. మాకు అది కూడా లేదు. ఆపే ఇస్తామన్నారు, బట్ దాని గురించి కూడా ఏమీ చెప్పలేదు. ఫిల్ అయినాయా? ఓకే ఓకే, మళ్ళీ చెప్తాను చేయమని.
Yeah, I request the participants to please mute yourselves. So you are creating a disturbance here. Sridhar sir. If you are taking the past trend as positive, so there are basically 10 uh, main rows here, and how many rows represent the positive, like how many times past trend has been taken as positive. So if you observe here, you'll have 6 values in past trend. So out of total 10 values, past trend it is taken as 6. So the probability of past trend being positive will be 6 divided by 10. Similarly, if you take past trend as negative, how many values are there in negative? So you'll have mostly 4 values here. So out of 10, the probability of past trend being negative is 4 by 10. So you'll be taking the full values here. But now you have to see if past trend is positive and the return is up. What is the probability here? So if you take past trend as positive and the output as up, so how much is the probability? That is, you have to see here. So if it is positive, the past trend is positive, and if it is up, so you have already seen positive has only six attributes, 6 rows here, 6 values here. So for that positive trend, how many times you have got up? So it will be 4 times. So you have taken it as probability is 4 by 6. And the next time you have to see if past trend is positive and the output value is down. So you basically have written as either up or down. So you have to calculate the attributes value, the input attribute which you are taking, and the output which you might get. So the algorithm will be calculating the input which is taken and the output variable also. So here the probability of determining return as down with past trend positive. So if the past trend is positive and return is down, it will be 2 by 6. So positive and down. So positive and down. Here you have two values. So it will be 2 by 60. So Gini index, if you remember the formula, it is nothing but 1 minus sigma of these probabilities. So here we have seen how the attribute is reflecting the output value. So the Gini index is calculated by 1 minus sigma of this whole square. So 1 minus 4 by 6 whole square plus 2 by 6 whole square. So this is the probability of having past trend as positive and you are getting the return value as either up or down. So the total Gini index, if you take the past trend as positive, is 0.45. And same thing you have to determine it for, so the algorithm determines for past trend equals to negative. So here also past trend if it is negative and return equals to up. So I think you might understand how the calculation is being done. So I need not show you again. So the probability of having past trend as negative and return up is 0. So there are no rows over there which has both the values. And the last one is past trend negative and return equals to down. So it is 4 by 4 which is 1. So Gini index basically here comes to 0. So if you take past trend attributes, you have positive or negative. In that, you are calculating how the output is being reflected, the probability. So you'll be calculating Gini index for past trend positive, and you'll be calculating for Gini index for negative, if the return is up or down. So the total weighted sum of all these past trend. So how much Gini index is being done for the past trend, that will be given here. So the calculation of the total Gini index for past trend will be the sum of the Gini indexes of the variables in that particular attribute. So of the values in that particular attribute. So you have to take past trend equal to positive, the sum of past trend equal to positive, and past trend equal to negative. So the total Gini index of past trend will be the probability of having it as positive into whether it is up or down plus 4 by 10, that is probability of being negative into probability of determining the output. So the total Gini index of this is 0.27. So this is how you calculate by taking one attribute. So the algorithm will take one attribute, and depending upon the output values, it will calculate the Gini index. So this is done for one attribute. So if you have any queries here, you can ask me so that can continue further, because the same procedure is repeated for the remaining attributes also. So if you can understand this, it will be very good so that we can proceed further. So if you have any queries here, you can ask me. Otherwise, we'll proceed further. Okay, so this is a calculation of Gini index for one attribute. So the same thing is done for other attributes. So if you take for past trend, you have calculated the Gini index. So for one attribute. So similarly, you have to calculate the Gini index for open interest, and the algorithms calculates the Gini index for trading one, depending on the output values. So the same procedure is repeated for open interest. So open interest again has two values, high and low, and if return is up or down, it calculate the same values. So out of 4, it is 2 by 4 and 2 by 4, so you'll get 0.5, and for low, it will have 0.44. So the total Gini index for open interest attribute is 0.47. So for past trend, it is 0.27, and for open interest, it is 0.47. So similarly for, you'll calculate the other attribute, which is trading volume. So when the Gini index is calculated again for up and down, and everything is calculated here. So the total Gini index you'll get for trading volume is 0.34. So the same procedure is repeated for each of the attributes in the data set. So now we'll see which of them is chosen as the root node. So the Gini index for past trend is 0.27, open interest is 0.47, and trading volume is 0.34. So in this, I told you that Gini index measures the impurity of that particular node. So impurity is less for past trend. So if you take the Gini index of past trend, it is less than the remaining attribute. So here the past trend will be first chosen as the root. So when you construct the decision tree, the algorithm, the past trend will be taken as the positive value, the root node value, and it has again two values, whether it is a positive or negative. So based on the root node, again you'll have positive or negative. So you need to understand how past trend is taken. So while calculating the Gini index, it has been getting the lesser value, which means that impurity of that particular node to obtain the output value is very much less here. So you'll be taking as the first root. So past trend, positive or negative, it will be taken here. So similarly, it goes for the next. So if the past trend is positive, which node has to be taken next? Or if past trend is negative, which node has to be taken next? So this will be determined again by calculating the Gini index for positive past trend. So you have to take the past trend is already taken here. So you have to take all the values for the past trend which are having positive only. So you'll be taking the positive values of past trend. So you'll be taking the positive value of past trend here, and you'll be determining the Gini index values of the attributes. So the same procedure is repeated again. So participants, please mute yourselves. So the pass trend is taken as positive here because the pass trend has been determined as a root node. So now it will be taken as a positive or negative. So for if the pass trend is taken as positive, you'll be determining the Gini index. And next you'll take if pass trend is negative, you'll be determining the Gini. So the positive pass trend. So for the pass trend, if it is positive, you'll be taking the next value. So you'll be determining the Gini index for open interest if pass trend is positive. So pass trend is positive is already fixed here. So you'll be next calculating the Gini index for open interest. So again, the same procedure is repeated if open interest is high and low. So open interest is high. What is the output value? The probability is determined, and we'll be determining 1 minus the probability values, sum of the probability values. And at last, we'll be calculating the Gini index, the total Gini index for the open interest. So here it comes to 0.33. So the similar way you'll be calculating for trading volume, and the next attribute which has to be taken by the algorithm is determined here. So here trading volume has 0, that is all the classes are purely classified. So you'll be getting the final output when you take the trade volume as the next attribute. So open interest is having 0.33, which is somewhat more impute than trading volume. So if you take pass trend as positive, next attribute is determined by calculating the Gini index. And here, if the trading volume is high, the output is determined as up. If it is low, it is determined as down. So here you will get the actual output because the Gini index is determined as 0 for trading volume. So that means that if trading volume is taken as the next attribute to determine the output in your decision tree, you will be getting the final output because the Gini index value of that particular trading volume attribute is 0. So in this way, it determines also the right side and everything. So this is basically what is happening behind the algorithm. So if you call the algorithm and if you predict the values, it constructs a decision tree inside like this, and it determines the output value. So this is what is happening inside. So before going to the practical session, in practical session, we'll be considering the decision classifier for iris dataset. So you'll be taking the decision tree classifier on iris dataset. So most of you will be aware of this iris dataset, what it is. So just to recap, so you'll be having attributes as sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width. And the output classes are basically three kinds. So it is iris setosa, versicolor, and virginia. So in our program, we'll be taking setosa as 0, versicolor as 1, and virginica as 2. So if your class is setosa, it will be 0. If it is versicolor, it will be 1, and virginica will be having 2. So the data set, what it is contains is it contains the attribute values for all the iris flowers. So basically, these are three kinds: setosa, versicolor, and virginica. So sepal is nothing but which has veins in it, and the width is determined like this, and length, and petal also the same thing. So depending on this width and length, it will be determining the class of the iris flower. So if you take the sum of the values in that particular data set, so you'll be having sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width, and the output class. So these are the input variables or independent variables, which is sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width, and we'll be determining the output class. So here inside our code, we'll be creating a decision tree classifier, and we'll be predicting the value. And how it determines the value is by calculating the Gini index, which we have seen earlier. Since it's a numeric value, it checks all the combinations by calculating the mean first. It takes the attribute value from there, and it calculates the Gini index, and it determines which can be taken as the root node and the next node. And the same procedure will be repeated by the algorithm inside. And you'll be seeing the output, how we have obtained. So when you go through the code here, so we are going through the code here. So we are basically taking the iris data set. So here SKLM, in SKLM we'll be having a module which is data sets. So in that we'll be importing load underscore iris. So which will be automatically getting the data set, iris data set, and it will be taking the values and keeping it in a data frame which is named as iris. So in this iris data set, we are taking all the rows and we are taking the columns from 2. So 2 column is nothing but here the sepal length is determined as 0, sepal width as 1, petal length as 2, and petal width as 3. So basically in Python you'll be taking 0, 1, 2, 3. So you'll be taking petal length and petal width as input. So you'll be taking petal length and petal. So here, if you take here, so here it is taking all the rows and petal length and petal width as input, and it is kept in a variable which is x. So it will be like a dictionary kind of thing where you'll be having all the values. And target value mainly contains the iris setosa, versicolor, or virginia. So it will determine iris setosa as 0, and I told you versicolor as 1 and 2 as virginia. So these values will be stored in the target variable which is y. So the input variables are the last 2 columns, petal length and petal width, and the output is a target variable which is iris setosa or versicolor or virginia. That is 0 or 1 or 2. So here we are importing the decision tree classifier class from sklearn.tree. So the tree module consists of all the classes which are useful for our decision tree. So the classifiers. So decision tree classifier object is created. Here we have taken maximum depth of 2. So this is one kind of a simple hyperparameter which can be given to a decision tree classifier, which determines how many nodes it has to create and until what depth. So I told you when we get the data, we'll be training the algorithm. So in sklearn, we have a method which is known as fit. So this fit uh, method, what it does is it trains the algorithm on the data which we have given as input x and y. So here we have taken the columns as petal length and petal width. We have trained the algorithm with output variable which is y. That is the output class, whether it is setosa, versicolor, or wedge. So here we have trained the algorithm. So the training is being done there, and here this code is mainly to draw the graph of the decision tree. So how the decision tree appears, that is got by this code. So when you train the algorithm, how the decision tree is internally generated, that is given by this code. So here export graphics is nothing but where you'll get a graphics is a program where after generating the code in this dot file, so you'll be generating the code associated with this in a dot file, iris tree dot, which is stored in the desktop of my system. So this contains the actual code. So this code, when you go to the graphis.com and webgraphis.com, and when you paste it, and when you generate that code, you'll be getting the actual decision tree, which has got from this training. So when you do this, you have to send as parameters for this export graphis as the classifier algorithm. So here classifier algorithm is taken as decision tree classifier. In the output file, you have taken it as iris tree dot. So inside this file, whatever code is generated by training the algorithm will be kept in this file. So iris dot. So whatever the features we are taking for outputting, that is nothing but the same thing which we have taken for training, the petal length and petal width. So these will be taken as the features which you want to display in the decision tree. And what are the target names is the nothing but the class name. So class name is basically Setosa, Versicolor, and Virginica. So here the target name will be displayed, but in our output you'll be having either 0 or 1 or 2. So rounded is nothing but if you want the ellipse shape to appear, you'll be giving rounded as true. field equal to true is nothing but if you want to fill the decision tree with that particular node, so then you will be giving field as true. So this is basically the code which is used for generating the decision tree. So what decision tree is generated inside by the algorithm, you can see it here. So this is being done by calculating the gene index, which we have discussed. So depending on the attribute values and stuff. So at last, we'll be giving the values of a new variable. So like you will be taking the petal length and petal width, and you will be giving your own values to determine the output class. So here I have taken 5.1 and 3.5, and here it is giving 1 as output. 1 is basically vertical. So depending on the training, whichever has been given for the algorithm, it has already been trained by using these features, and you will be getting the output by using the predict. So just remember that training is done by the fit method, and if you want any output value, it is done by the predict. So fit is used for training the algorithm and predict is used for getting the new value. And this code, everything does the generating of the graph. So whatever is generated by the algorithm to see that graph, only you are using this. So we'll see the output, how it is generated. So if you take this code has been generated uh, by the algorithm, and when you it is generated in the dot file ihistory dot dot, and when you take this code and when you paste it in webgraphics.com, so you can take that you can type it in Google and you can paste it here, and when you click on generate graph, so when you click on generate graph, it will be generating the graph the algorithm has generated behind the scenes. So here if you take Gini equals to 0.6, so this has been calculated by the algorithm. So how it is calculated, we have seen with an example. So it will be trying all the possibilities of values of the petal length from starting from the mean of the particular attribute, and it will determine for what it is having gene index as the lesser one. So if it takes petal length and petal width as input, which is having the gene index as less, that will be taken. And next, if it is true, next which class has to be determined and which attribute has to be determined, that is taken here. So if petal length is less than equal to 2.45, here if you see 50, 50, 50 is nothing but the different number of classes appearing in that iris data set. So 50 is for setosa, 50 versicolor, and 50 virgin. So it is equally distributed. So here, if it is determined as true, so if it is less than 2.45, it automatically predicts as setosa. So if petal length is less than 2.45, it is predicting it as setosa. So if it is false, again it will take petal width, and how it is determining is based on Gini index. So here in the algorithm or in the code, you are not specifying Gini index, but it is taken as default. So there is another thing which is entropy. It is mostly not preferred because of the logarithmic operation it has. So depending on the Gini index, everything is calculated and you'll be getting the final output. Okay. So here, if you take we have taken input as petal length and petal width. Now, if you take sepal length and sepal width as input. So if you want to take sepal length and sepal width as input, the code changes which you have to make here is, instead of giving here 2 slice, so here you can give it as 0 slice 2. So that is nothing but the first column and 0th column and first column. So here it will be taking it as sepal length and sepal width as input. So the output class is determined here. So it will take sepal length and sepal width, and it will determine the output. So here also it will determine the true and false.
reference కాదు ఇది దేనికి వర్క్షాప్ FDP వర్క్షాప్ దేనికి యాక్చువల్లీ
true and false values.
proof for దేనికి send your ID card proofs to this mail అన్నాడు అంతే ఏమంటాడు టాపిక్ ఏంది ఇది అంటావా సైబర్ సెక్యూరిటీ అండ్ ఫోరెన్సిక్ అది పెట్టాలనా cyber security thing and then
Yes, sir. Can you please mute
program,
yourself?
faculty development program and wait last time.
Where is that? Huh? Yeah, participant by name Pujita. Can you please mute yourself? So it is causing a lot of disturbance every time. And Murli Krishna also. So it is causing a lot of disturbance. Again, I had to ask the host to mute. So this is how you take sepal length and sepal width, or pedal length and pedal width. So depending on our inputs, we'll be getting the output values. So this is the one which we have studied in theory, how Gini index is calculated and the corresponding code and the generation of the graph. So this is about the decision. So we'll take a break here, and after the break, we'll continue with the k nearest neighbor algorithm. So we'll take a 10 minutes break and we'll meet at 12 o'clock. So thank you. Sir.
bro.
Welcome back. So now we'll be discussing the k nearest neighbor algorithm. So this is also a supervised classification algorithm, like a decision tree, and it has own criteria to determine the output values. So first we'll see the process which is happening inside. Then we'll be looking into the actual coding process. So here the k nearest neighbor algorithm, first what it does is we have to
PPT is not visible,
set a
sir. PPT.
parameter. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sir, thank you.
So here in the k nearest neighbor algorithm, the main parameter which is determined by k, which is nothing but the number of nearest neighbor which we want to calculate. So here you will be taking the value which has to be predicted, that is called as a query instance, and you'll be calculating the Euclidean distance between the current values and the nearest neighbors which are determined by k. So we'll be sorting the distance according to the minimum distance criteria in the ascending order, and we'll be determining the variable y, which is applicable for the nearest neighbors. So which is having the majority, that class will be assigned to the newly predicted value. So the value which the algorithms need to be predicted, that value will be being assigned based on the majority of the classes, which has been calculated by the Euclidean distance. So the Euclidean distance, many of you know that the formula is given by square root of, basically if you have x1, y1 and x2, y2, x1 minus x2 whole square plus y1 minus y2 whole square. So basically if you take this, the distance from on the x-axis is represented by x1 minus or x2 or x2 minus x1, and the distance in the y-axis it will be represented by y1 minus y2, and if you apply Pythagoras theorem you'll get the square root of x1 minus x2 plus whole square plus y1 minus y2 whole square, which is the distance between the two given points. So here I am going to explain you with a simple example so that you will be able to know how KNN works. Then we'll be going to the practical thing. So here it is basically related to a paper, and you want to determine the classification of the paper, whether it is a good or bad based on two attributes: acid durability and strength. So the values which are given are x1 and x2, which are these values: acid durability and strength. And the main thing which you want to determine is whether it is a good or bad paper. So uh, the values which you are going to predict, or the algorithm which needs to predict, is if acid durability is 3 and strength is 7. So x1 and x2 are 3 and 7, uh, whether it will be a good values to determine or to make a tissue paper. So here already the values are given, and you should determine the output class now for this newly arrived predicted value. So 3 comma 7 is our new value which has to be predicted, the output class, and these are already the existing values. So what the algorithm does now is, for this instance, the query instance 3 comma 7, it calculates the Euclidean distance between all the values. So as I told you, square root of x1 minus x2, here x1 is taken as 7 minus 3 whole square plus 7 minus 7 whole square. So square root is eliminated for simplification purpose. So the value will be 16, 25, 9 and 13. So here the k parameter is taken as 3. So you will determine the values in the ascending order, and you will see which are the three nearest neighbors to 3 comma 7. So if you take 3 comma 7, the nearest neighbors here are the value which you got is 9, 13, 16. So you'll be eliminating the value 25 for further purpose. So here, if you take the values which are being calculated and you assign ranks for them in the order of ascending order. So 9 is the closest distance. So the query instance 3 comma 7 is related to 3 comma 4 in a lesser distance. So it is ranked as 1. And the 13 distance is next minimum. It is ranked as 2, 16 as third, and 25 as 4. So here this value is not taken into consideration because we have taken the k as 3. So you are determining the 3 nearest neighbors to a particular query instance 3 comma 7. So now what the algorithm does, it sees the class of these assigned variables. So 1, 2, 3, which are ranked first, it will be determining the output. So here yes or no indicates whether you want to include it further in the algorithm. So now this is 4 ranked, so it will be eliminated for the further investigation, and it will be taking only these 3 points 1, 2, and 3, which are ranked 1, 2, and 3. So you'll be taking those points, and this point is eliminated because it is ranked as 4, and you'll be determining the output class for these 3 points. So here the output class for these 3 points is bad, good, and good. So in this, majority class has been assigned as good. So your output class automatically will be assigned good. So since the majority of the class is good, so your output class will be determined as good, and your 3 comma 7. So if your x1 and x2 is 3 comma 7, it will be determined as good values for to construct it or to make a new tissue paper. So this is a simple example of how KNN, K nearest neighbor, is calculated. So depending on the query instance, you'll be calculating the Euclidean distance, and it will be ranked according to the ascending order, and you'll be determining, depending on the value of K, the nearest neighbors will be taken, and the output class is determined, and whichever majority is there, that will be assigned to the particular class. So this is the theoretical concept which is going behind the algorithm. So now if you see the coding part, so as I told you, coding will be simpler only. So here, when you see the coding part, you are taking, you are importing from sklearn.neighbors, so which is a module in sklearn. You'll be importing this class, and here there is a train underscore test underscore split module, or this method. What it does is, it splits your data into training and testing. So training and testing data sets. So here test underscore size is a parameter which is given to that particular method. and it is given as 0.2. That is nothing but 20% of your data has to be assigned to the test and 80% to the training. So 80% of the rows will be assigned to x underscore train, and 20% that is iris data set. As I told you, it consists of 150 rows. So 20% of 150 is like 30. So 30 will be assigned to the testing purpose. So whatever rows you have for training will be in X train, and whatever the output classes for these variables for this set of values in X train, that will be placed in Y train. So X train is nothing but a NumPy array which consists of all the input attributes, and Y train corresponds to the particular output class. And X test is the 20%, that is the 30 rows which are in the uh, iris data set, and that will be stored in X underscore test in a NumPy array, and Y underscore test corresponds to the corresponding output values for these particular attributes. So X train and Y train will consist of the training data. X test and underscore Y underscore test will consist of the testing data. So it will be 80%, and this will be consisting of 20%. So the code which you have seen before, the same thing is done here. You'll be loading the iris data set, and whatever the data you want in the training will be placed in X. So here we have taken iris data. So I told you there will be 4 input columns and 1 output column which determines the iris flower values. So here the data part is here taken into X. So all the attributes like sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width are all taken into X, and Y consists of the target values. So here, when you take train underscore test underscore split, it splits the X and Y values into 80% and 20%. That is the training, the input values and the target values. And X underscore train and Y underscore train consists of the training values or the training data, and test underscore Y underscore test consists of the testing data. So here we have taken the object of k neighbors classifier, and this is a hyperparameter. So we have talked about hyperparameter in the introduction part. So this is a hyperparameter which determines the performance of the algorithm. So here the nearest neighbors it has taken as 7. So the calculations which we have seen by taking k equals to 3, the algorithm now does for k equals to 7. So when we give a new value, it determines the nearest 7 neighbors from its values, and whatever the output majority class is there, that will be assigned to the our new predict that values which we are going to predict. So as I told you, fit method, what it does, it trains the data. So your training data is in X underscore train and Y underscore train. So now k nearest neighbor algorithm is trained here. So depending on the input variables and the output variable. So input variables are nothing but your 4 columns: sepal length, sepal width, and petal length and petal width. And your output value is setosa, versicolor, virginica, that is 0, 1, and 2. So this is the values which are there, and you'll be predicting the training is being done here, and you'll be predicting the output values for the test data, and you'll printing that. So if you see the output values here, so already this is the train data which is there, and the corresponding output class, and here is the output values which we have applied for testing data. So if you see, almost all the classes have been properly classified, but the only thing is here the output class here for the trained test data is 2 original class, while the predicted value is 1 here. So that's why our accuracy. So accuracy is nothing but the total values correctly predicted, that is showing as 96.6. So now if it is 100%, it will show as 100%. So when you take this prediction values, uh, what we can do here is you can try to change the hyperparameter. As I told you, the hyperparameters, they decide the performance. So you can change the hyperparameter values, and you can run and see it again. Uh, so So if you see, if you change the hyperparameter value from 7 to 5, so I have changed the hyperparameter value from 7 to 5 here, and now you can see that all the target values have been predicted correctly. So the test data which you have taken and the predicted values both are the same. So the accuracy will be shown as 1. That is nothing but 100%. So there are some, and the predicted value for the new one. So if you take these values, so this is the new set of values which I want to predict. So this is the new set of values which I want to predict. So these values, when I give it as input, it will be predicting the actual output class. So here it is taken as 0. So it is predicted as 0, which is nothing but setos. So like this, the algorithm will be predicting. So some of the performance measures are there for the algorithms. So the performance measures, some of the performance measures are confusion matrix, accuracy, precision, and recall. So all of them will determine the performance. So how the algorithm is being performed. So this is the code behind that. So if you want to calculate the confusion matrix, you can give like this. So what this confusion matrix does is, so it takes the predicted values and the actual values. So predicted values and actual values are taken, and it determines the output matrix. So if the predicted value is setosa, how many actual values are there and how many predicted are setosa. So here we have taken the output for the testing data. So testing data mainly consists of 20% of the whole data. So that is nothing but 30 rows. So 11 plus 9 plus 10, that will be giving 30 rows. So in this first row represents Setosa, versicolor, and virginica. So if there are 10 kinds of Setosa in actual class, that has been predicted correctly. So nothing has been predicted wrong. So similarly, if you take the second value as versicolor and third value as virginica, so all of them have been predicted correctly. So the actual class and the predicted class, all of them are correct. So you'll see nothing in the remaining column. So it will be 0 because all of them are being predicted correctly. That's why you have got the accuracy as 1 here. So similarly, if you see the confusion matrix for 7, because if you take it as 7 here, nearest neighbors, and if you run the code here, so automatically the accuracy is 96.67. So, so one of the participants has asked like 80% and 20%, is it mandatory? That depends on your preferences, sir. So you can take it as 70-30. So most of the time you'll be taking it as 80 and 20 only. But it depends on your requirement. So you can take it as 70 and 30 also if you want to test on more data. If you want to train more data, you can take it as 70 and 30 also. So here, if you see the confusion matrix values, here Setosa value, the actual class and predicted class, if for Setosa, one value has been predicted wrong. So that is what we have seen here. So if the Setosa value, it has been predicted as the versicolor value, sorry, the versicolor value, it has been predicted as virginia. So the same thing is given here. So there is one wrong prediction here. So that is why it is shown as 1 here. So the output class is, again, if you give the values, it will determine the output class, which is as 0. So these are some of the performance measures, the confusion matrix, accuracy, and so since time is running out, I'll just give a quick overlook of the performance measures. So another thing which we can do is we have train underscore test underscore split, which splits the data into 80 and 20 as we have seen. But the training and testing data will be only in a order. So now what we can do is we can go for k-fold validation, where the training data is again divided into different parts. So again, you can give the hyperparameter k split inside it. So if it is 5 splits, what it does is training data, in the training data only, the training data will be divided into 5 folds, like 5 different sets of data, and one fold will be taken for testing and remaining for training. Like that, the second split will be taken, the second fold will be taken for training, testing, and remaining folds for training. So this thing will be done until you reach the final test data. So what happens when you do k-fold validation is you'll be inside the training data only, you'll be creating training and testing separately. And when you go to the final round, and you'll be evaluating on the testing data. So what this does is it improves the performance of the algorithm. When you go for train underscore test underscore split, it just splits the data into 80 and 20 in a proper order, or randomly. But this, what it does is inside the training only, it splits again into training and testing, and the last data will be evaluated on the testing data. So that can be done through coding using stratified k-fold method. So if you apply stratified k-fold, so if you take this stratified k-fold method here, so instead of train underscore test underscore split, if you take stratified k-fold, it will be dividing into the folds whatever we have seen diagram, and it will be divided, and the final test will be given. So similarly, there are some performance measures for classification algorithm, this confusion matrix. So many of you might be aware of this. So if the predicted class and true class, the actual class is positive, that is, if the actual class is positive and the algorithm has predicted as positive, it is known as true positive. Otherwise, it is taken as false positive. Similarly, if it is predicted value is negative and the actual class is positive, it will be false negative. And if it is correct, that is both predicted and actual class are both negative. So it is predicted correctly, it will be true negative. So which have been predicted correctly, it will be taken as true. Suffix will be true negative, and if it is correct positive, it will be true positive. Right? So there are different measures based on this confusion matrix also. The accuracy, which is calculated, which is the total number of predictions by uh, correct predictions. That is correct predictions divided by total number of predictions. And you have precision, which is mainly based on the total number of positive classes predictions which have been predicted correctly. And next is recall and specificity. This is also uh, the true positive rate. So when you plot the confusion matrix, you can get this, and you can apply the algorithm, the math behind it, and you can get the specificity. F1 score. F1 score is the harmonic mean of precision and recall, and the formula which is applied is this one. So one of the thing which I really wanted to tell you is many of you might go through the confusion matrix, but if it is a multi-class, so if it is a binary class, you determine it correctly only. So what if it's a multi-class? That is, if his output is three classes. So it is a simple example where you have three fruits: mango, orange, and apple, and the true class and predicted class. Here, true positive is taken as 7. So apple, if it is determined as apple only, it is taken as second. So if it is a binary variable, you take the remaining column as true negative. What if it is a multi-class? So multi-class, it is nothing but the remaining values which are not associated with apple to apple. You can take them all as true negative. So all of these values together come and form the true negative. So that is nothing but 2 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1, which is 8. So again, false positive. False positive is nothing but which have been predicted as wrong as apple. So you'll take it as 9 plus 8 because this is predicted as orange and this is mango. So 8 plus 9 will be 70. And false negative. False negative will be nothing but which have been here. So 1 plus 3. So which are in the negative. So main thing is while predicting true negative, how you take is the actual predicted value, the remaining values you have to take. So this precision, recall, and F1 score, they can be applied by these math formulas, and you can calculate that, and you'll be getting the values of precision, recall, and F score. So these can be done in coding also by just importing sklearn and dot matrix. Here you can import precision score, recall score, and F1 score, and you can calculate the corresponding scores. So this is for today. Still, we have Navy-based classifiers, and we have some more hyperparameter tuning, and everything is there. but due to the time constraints, I'm closing it here. So one important thing is there won't be session tomorrow and day after tomorrow, as it is a second Saturday and Sunday. So the next session will be on Monday. So that is on 13th. So my colleague Chowdappa sir will be explaining about the types of regression algorithm, what is the importance of regression and the stuff. And last day you'll be studying about clustering. So hope you got some basic knowledge. Depending on this basic knowledge, you can improve if you are doing some research work or if you are trying to take up this course. So thank you very much, Mananda. You guys have a nice day. Bye.